Hello, everyone. My name is Debankur, and thank you so much for inviting me here. And we do not have a lot of time, so I'll go very quick over some soil health principles and management in
What?
Are you showing your face?
No.
and
No.
so
Thank God.
how I define soil health is if your soil or any soil is performing the functions that are meant to perform, like supplying nutrients, water,
Valid online.
space,
You
better
have to use it in
energy,
store.
then we call that soil healthy. And if not, then we think the soil is not healthy because it's not performing the function exactly like a human body. So what functions do these soils perform? Mostly cycling nutrients, improve soil structure, boosting biology, cycling all those nutrients through environment, air, water, and soil, right? And definitely we are looking for a healthy environment all the time. And soil works as a filter and a buffer to take all those pollutants and toxic materials. And if the soil is performing all these functions properly, we call the soil healthy. If not, then we have to do some more. We have to manage the health, right? Like we take medicines, we have to amend the soil health, right? So our biggest challenge in Arizona is
Go in there, Matt. Perfect.
I'm sorry.
If everyone could please mute, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, so, okay. I thought someone asked a question. So, okay, we all know the biggest challenge here is the extreme hot temperature. So we have very high evapotranspiration. It's evaporation and transpiration. It's a process that happens in nature. Evaporation is just takes water out of the soil, and transpiration also takes water out of the soil through plants. Now, both together is taking up all our soils upwards in the atmosphere, but we get a very little precipitation, as you can see in our state. The difference between this precipitation evapotranspiration is so high that we have upward movement of water from soil to atmosphere. What happens is all the salts, the fertilizers that are soluble, they move with water. So what happens, these salts also move upward, and we have a salt problem here. So the biggest challenge is the difference between the precipitation we get and the evapotranspiration we have here naturally occurring. With this high temperature, we also have a problem of soil organic matter decomposition. So when you have a high temperature, what happens, the microbes try to feed on the carbon-based materials available in the soil. So it's very hard to maintain high carbon levels in the soil because microbes just eat them up very fast. And it depends on, it's a reaction that happens, and it's completely dependent on temperature. And we cannot stop it because our environmental setup is such that these reactions will keep happening. So we can always modify these processes through different processes that I will talk about later. So the biggest deals are very high temperature, very low precipitation, and that gives rise to all these problems, having low organic matter and very high salt in our soils. The biggest challenges here. Now, you can't have all these challenges, but the principles to manage your soil will be the same. How we will save our soils or make our soils healthy, we should put some kind of armor to the soil. It can be different crops, not having fallow, putting residues, mulch, any type of armor that will protect the soil from air and water and other natural enemies of soils. You know, they erode soil, they lose fertility. The soils lose fertility due to that, because the topsoil is the most fertile part of our soil. So we want to cover it. So soil armor is the first soil health principle, followed by living root maintenance. So we can always have a dead root that have some carbon into it and that add carbon, but the living root serves a far larger purpose. It has the connection, it keeps the connection between the above ground and the below ground life, you know, plant, the microbes in the soil. So the soil microbes that cycle all those nutrients, take out all those pollutants, and help plant get fed, these microbes also need food from these plants in return. If you don't have living roots, plants cannot feed them. Plants feed them through like sugars and other materials. So we have to maintain living roots to have a proper biology in our soil. Then we should have a diverse ecosystem. We cannot grow a same crop over and over. The more diversity we have, the more kinds of like different variety of microorganisms can thrive in soil. So we should have a diversity going on, a proper crop rotation going on in the same piece of land, because we want all these microbes to play a part in the healthy ecosystem. Biology is a very important factor, and we all know about that, how important biology is. Not only microbes, the mesofauna, the earthworms, and other mesofauna. Now you might say, oh, our soils in Arizona might not have earthworms, but I would challenge that they would, if you have food and shelter and water from them and environment from them. And I have seen one farmer very recently, an urban farm, he started growing cover crops, and the first year, just around the year, it was a good year too, because we got some rains, and they have seen earthworms first time in their land, and this is the photo from their land, and it's great. I mean, this is so dark. I couldn't believe soils can be that dark, but well, their practices are a little different, and I might see a lot reddish, lot withered soil, but still we can find better biology in our soils. Integrating livestock is a very cool concept. It's part of soil health principles, and I understand that in a lot of farms it is not possible because managing livestock is another big deal. But we can always start with a few number of livestock, a few goats or sheep, and have a collaboration going on. So what happens? These livestock are machines. They are living machines in a small space that they take. They can cycle the whole nutrients, the nitrogen, the phosphorus, the carbon. All these things can cycle in a small space, and only livestock can do that because they have a biology, the rumen. In the rumen of their body, they have a biology going on that fastens the process, that keeps a proper temperature for this processing of nutrient release and nutrient cycling. So the livestock are very important in any farming situation. Well, but the type of how we can integrate livestock can be different. And definitely we need to minimize soil disturbance. Soil disturbance is always pushing you back from healthy soils. The more you disturb your soil, the natural processes stop occurring. The natural revival of the soils, revival of the biology stops occurring. So minimizing soil disturbance is a big deal. Now, I'm not talking about going no-till or very less till. I'm talking about whatever you do, whatever operations you do in your land, try figure out a way to do it less. Like if you till for like 5 times to make a seed bed, do it 4 times and see what happens and how we can manipulate that that reduction in tillage through other practices. How can I help? How can you help the soil have a healthier system, a more natural, less disturbed system? Now, a lot of people talk about, you know, how you manage soil health is you test soils and you figure out what you need and you do it. But I also say that, you know, it should be aligned with the farm goals, because what do you want from your soil? What kind of produce you want? Do you want organic produce or conventional? Do you want vegetables or you want leafy greens? You want corn? Depending on what your farm goals, what kind of crops you want to grow, and how what quality you require, and what specific socioeconomic situation you are in. It all depends on that. What kind of resources you have, what kind of tools you have, what kind of implements you have. And then we can only decide what kind of management practice we can do, because a farm can only be sustainable if it is economically and environmentally sustainable. We have to think about both. A farm has to make profit. A farm cannot just come and buy new implements. I understand that. So all our soil health management goals should revolve around what resources are available, what is the current soil status, and what farm goals are. So our soil health management should be a very nice intersection of this, all 3 practices. Now, I talked about the reduced tillage and conservation. What it does, it just keeps more residue on ground. And when you have more residue, it acts as an armor. It protects the soil. And with this residue, so when you cut a crop and sell it, you are selling what? You're selling your water, you're selling your biology, you're selling your nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, carbon, all these things that the crop took from the soil. So the way of reduced tillage and keeping some residue back is giving soil time to revive, and disturbing less means soils can start their process, because once you disturb the soil, everything restarts. So having a reduced soil disturbance operation will give them enough time to revive. A soil has its own capability. It can come back, but you have to give them enough time. Soil armor, we talked about it, and it can be in different ways. It doesn't have to be cover crops, because every time I talk about cover crops, it comes with a sense that it will take your water, it will take the nutrients and everything. But there are other ways you can utilize cover crops. It can be a good feed that you can sell. And I'm working with some growers, they're growing cover crops, but some of them like their cover crops so much they did not sell it, because then they figured out those cover crop biomass had so much of nutrients that they picked from here and there. And one thing you cannot get from soil, it comes from atmosphere, which is carbon dioxide and sunlight. So what happens? Plants can store carbon dioxide and through photosynthesis. They can capture carbon dioxide through sunlight with the use of sunlight and water, and make carbon-based materials. So if you want to enrich carbon in your soil, you have to trap more carbon dioxide. You have to trap more sunlight and water. And it can only happen through living plants, because they can photosynthesize and they can trap those carbon and put it back. So when you do cover crop and you put it back, you are actually taking up all those carbons, right? And also there are always other materials that are toxic. These plants can bind and help those toxic materials go into the water and pollute the environment, right? So the soil armor can be a different kind. It can be just residues, can be just mulch, or can be living armor like cover crops. Crop diversification is very important, because every crop takes certain amounts of nutrients of certain types. So if you grow only one kind of crop, it will take only one kind of nutrients, and your soil will be exhausted with that nutrient. But if you have different kind of crops, they will take different pallets of nutrients, different pools of nutrients, and every nutrient will have some time to come back and restore soil fertility. So soil diversification is not only for the biology of the soil, but also how you manage your soil's fertility. Talked already about soil health management when I talked about soil residue management, when I talked about reduced tillage, because managing soil residue is a big deal. You don't want too much residue that will trap a lot of nutrients and carbon, or you don't want no residue, because it will expose your soil to the environmental criminals, the raindrops, the high heat, the wind, the heavy gust of wind. Right today, right, I'm in Maricopa, it's windy, and it will take all bare soils, the loose, the beautiful soil, take out of place, and it will be dirt. It's a difference between soil and dirt, right? You want the soil to be in place. So, okay, what's next? A cover crop. We talked about cover crop. There are many other ways, like it can control weed and pests, because if you have water, and water, you don't have to put water. You can get a rain, all right? And you have sunlight, you have carbon dioxide, and something will grow, because nature works that way. Nature brings diversity. Nature doesn't know which crop is weed, which crop is like food. Nature will grow whatever is available, whatever seed is available. That seed will germinate, it will take the water, it will take the sunlight, it will capture the moisture, and it will be weedy. So if you want to stop weed to grow, you have to grow something that you would like to grow. And that can be cover crop, that can be your crop, a cash crop, but you have to keep growing on that ground so that you can always compete with those weeds. And also cover crops have another deal, like they have beautiful flowers, and that can attract pollinators and natural enemies of pests. So you can control pests also, and it has been proven. But it takes time. It's not that visible. Like you start doing cover crop, and by the end of the month or end of the year, you start seeing everything. It doesn't happen, because all the processes are buffered. Soil has its own resistance system. It doesn't let you change everything at once. So it takes time. but cover crops can store moisture. Those roots can infiltrate more water. You see a bare ground and see a crop ground. When rain happens, when you see the standing water on a bare ground, because it cannot infiltrate, need that water to infiltrate so that you can reserve your soil storage, right? Soil water storage. So cover crops are actually can provide for your biology, provide diversity. It can fix nitrogen. You can put some legumes which can fix nitrogen as a mix of cover crops, and they will fix nitrogen. And this photo is from last year, last spring, when I started here in the University of Arizona. And you can also graze this cover crop to feed animals. It can be your animals or your partner's animals. You can partner with a small farm, and they can bring their livestock, and they can feed on those cover crops. So what do you get? You get all those nutrient cycling happening in your land, and those grazers, those livestock, got their food because you know how pricey the food are. So it can be in different ways, as I said. You can do cover crops in different ways. It can be solo, it can be a mix, it can be a pollinator mix, it is soil builder mix. There's so many different options that are available. And this is another important thing. So you apply a lot of nutrients in the soil, and a lot of them are left in the soil. So in a bare soil, the nutrients will leach over here. But when you have cover crops, they take up those unavailable nutrients, and then they keep them in the residue, and then the residues decompose and the nutrient release, and then you have your cash crop, and they can take up those nutrients. So you actually increase nutrients use, because otherwise these nutrients will go into the water and pollute the environment, and you will have troubles. The other ways to building soil health is sometimes, especially in Arizona, we have so high temperatures that the organisms cannot survive. So you might have a poor soil biology. So what you can do, you can add compost, which is a food source for the crop, for the microbes. Then you can add microbial amendments like rhizobia amendments, PGPR, which is just a different form of rhizobacteria, other microbes that are helpful for nutrient cycling. You can add them, provide them food like compost, like the carbon-based product, and they can proliferate. And then you start managing the soil, and you can have those life back in your soil. There are different kinds of soil amendment that you can choose based on what you can do, because I know there are certain regulations against certain kinds of amendments in certain scenarios. So we have to maintain that, but there are a lot of options. You can always find the best suited options, and we are there. The extension office is there. You can always reach out to us, and we can help you out, like figuring out what kind of compost you should use and you can use. And well, composts are not fertilizers. They do not have a lot of nutrients. What they do, they modify the environment in the soil through application of a lot more carbon. And what happens when you have a better environment, everything starts improving, the fertility, the biology, everything. So don't think soil amendments as a fertilizer. They can provide some nutrients, but not a lot, like a fertilizer. Okay, so keep that in mind. So you cannot really replace fertilizer with amendments. These are amendments that amends your soil. On-farm composting can be a very good deal because it doesn't require a lot of area, and you can create your own compost if you have access to this the good feedstock. And there are a lot of materials available online and through corporate extension. And if you make your own compost, so you kind of doing it in a way, it's a more economic way of building your soil health. Biochar is a little expensive. Sometimes it might be very useful because they are very high in carbon. They do not degrade fast, but still I have seen a report in Arizona, it degrades very, very, very fast. So what I can say is, like, if you can afford, like, again, it's all about the farm's goals, the farm's resources, the farm's expectations, right? If it fits in your expectation, in your goal, in your resources, you can always try biochar because it will add carbon, but carbon will not always do all the job that a soil should do. Carbon will take part of the job. So do not expect biochar to improve all your soil health at once. It will start developing your soil environment, but you have to do other management practices to maintain your soil health, to maintain or improve your soil, okay? So remember that. So what we understood is, like, definitely soil carbon influences more soil fractions or more soil functions, more soil roles, but it's not all of them. Okay, you have to do other stuff to manage overall soil health. Soil cover is definitely helpful. Biology helps in nutrient cycling, maintain your soil fertility, and definitely managing holds the key. And to keep water, you need carbon. So again, comes back to carbon, but it's keeping the carbon in the soil. You cannot just add carbon and be forgetful about that. You have to do a good job in maintaining the carbon. That is more important. With that, I would say that soil health building takes time, and you have to be patient. But if you do the same thing, you can see the indications. And with that, I would say thank you, and please feel free to reach out to me if you have any question.
Thank you, Debankur, and we will certainly also have time for questions at the end, so save your questions and we'll get to them at the end with the open Q&A and follow up for ones we cannot get to. I'm going to introduce now Rick Lopez to speak to everyone.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, and I appreciate coming down to Arizona and speaking with you all. First, I want to talk about the doctor's presentation was just so perfect and spot on, because when we're talking about small farmers and we're talking about urban farming, it is so critical and it's so simple to maintain quality soil. Out west, I work for Washington Beginning Farmer Coordinator. I'm also a rancher in central New Mexico. I raise Black Angus cattle, and I have a small operation, so I understand what's going on. But the things that I want to talk to you guys a little bit about is, if you're just looking to get into farming, if maybe you're just starting out, we understand at the USDA that you guys are most vulnerable. You guys have the least resources of which to fall back on during emergencies and whatnot. There must be a strong partnership with the soil and water conservation districts. Must be an extremely strong partnership with the extension service. The extension services in your area are the backbone for urban farming and the backbone for beginning farmers and ranchers, because they are the boots on the ground. We understand that partnership that must be developed with our extension services. So I applaud each and every one of you working for the extension service out there. Beginning farmers, urban farming, always start with your extension service, because one thing, they are very, very familiar with your particular climate, your soil challenges, your environmental challenges. In New Mexico and out west, we say that whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting, because water is so critical. And if any of you are following out there what's going on with the dispute with the Colorado River right now, that is going to drastically affect Arizona. Be aware of your surroundings and what's going on. But when it all begins with your extension services, because they are the experts for your area. They're the ones that are going to be able to come down, give you a hands-on approach. They work specifically with small groups. We at the USDA, we see that there's a great need, because the average farming is creeping up to about 69 years old. I mean, that's getting pretty high up there for your beginning farmer and ranchers. We need to build a bench. We need to get that other team coming up and taking over. And one of the neatest approaches that this USDA administration is really, really focusing on is of the beginning farmers, and how can we work to develop urban farming. A lot of the restrictions have been very, very much relaxed as far as what can we do to work with urban farming. But I'm going to challenge each and every one of you guys. I want you guys to sit there and think, if you're going to get into urban farming, I want you to think outside the box. I don't want you just to think about following the traditional lines of agriculture that we have done year in and year out. Now, granted, we are the most successful nature. We most successful farmers in all of the world. We produce more crops per acre than any other country in the world. because we have a great combination of willpower, of experience, of tradition, and then also the expertise that's coming in from your ag universities. What we need to do though is we need to recognize that how are we going to be able to start thinking differently? Not everybody has access to 500 acres. Not everybody has access to 250 acres to sit there and say, I want to start farming, because you start looking at what are your infrastructure costs going to be? You're going to need a tractor. You're going to need seed. You're going to need diesel to run that tractor. You're going to need fertilizers. And these costs, these startup costs are enormous. But if you're going into urban farming, thinking outside the box, you may look at, okay, is there a nonprofit out there that is working with the community, working with the city councilors to utilize some of those vacant, empty lots out there? Now, the number one challenge in doing that is going to be water. But across this country, urban communities, cities are donating the water to be used to grow the crops. In exchange, they're giving a lot of those crops that are harvested to homeless or other nonprofit organizations to help feed their communities. What we want to do with the USDA, though, is we want to be able to kind of help you untangle that umbrella. The USDA is an extremely large organization. It has 17 different organizations. But the ones that are most important to you is the Farm Service Agency, which has two folds. It handles the financial end, financial lending, and then it also has the program side of the house. And the program side of the house is extremely, extremely important because that is the risk management side of the house. We're the ones that offer NAP insurance, non-assurable products. We're the ones that'll help you get your little piece of property registered with the USDA so you'll be eligible to work and apply for different cost share programs that are out there and whatnot with the NRCS, with FSA, with full development, with RMA, with NEFA, and all of these different organizations. But so the USDA is this big tangled web. Now, what we've done is in the 2014 Farm Bill, they created my position, which I began as a regional coordinator. I covered Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and Nevada. And 5 years later, they saw the great work that was being that was occurring. And they, in 2018 Farm Bill, they created state coordinators. Now, each state has a coordinator specifically to help beginning farmers and ranchers. Now, you guys out there in Arizona are very, very lucky because your state coordinator is one of the most passionate coordinators that I have on my team. She's going to work diligently. She's going to work hard for you. She's going to get answers if she doesn't know them. She's a perfect team player, and that's Santa Maria. Santa, I'm going to ask you to please put your email address on there. And guys, now you also have for the state of Arizona, you guys have an urban ag coordinator specifically focused on urban ag. And that person is Trish McMenigill. And I apologize if I butchered your name, Trish. And Santa, if you can please put her email address up on there as well. These are two people that you can go to that are familiar with the challenges that Arizona brings specifically. One of them is extreme heat. One of the challenges, believe it or not, is you guys can grow in the desert area. You guys can grow year round. You guys can grow leafy greens in the wintertime. You guys can grow hardy crops in the summertime. But that creates an extreme challenge on the nutrients in your soil and where you're at. Now, if you're starting urban farming and you're starting out there in the back alleyways, or if you're starting out there on a vacant lot, that soil has not had those nutrients that the doctor was talking to you guys about. So there's going to be challenges. Now, you start off with a farm number. You come to the FSA office and they'll give you a farm number on where you're at, okay? Now that is going to open the door for programs that the USDA has to offer. One of them is the NRCS, the National Resource and Conservation Center. What's nice about them is these guys are also soil experts. They're going to be able to come in, see what challenges you have, say, hey, you guys may need to bring in a whole bunch of topsoil. You guys may have to bring in some compost to start mixing in with that soil to get that soil composition just right so you can start growing. They offer EQIP grants. It's not an EQIP grant, it's an EQIP cost share, where they may be able to cost share with you up to 90% of the costs. And that will be included with a drip system. You guys want to put a drip system in. And it's not just simply hooking up a drip system. You know, are you going to need filtration systems so that those, if your water is really, really hard, so it doesn't clog up the pores on the drip system? You're going to have to learn, how do I go about irrigating? How much water do I need? Are these plants going to need? Because different plants are going to have different water requirements. NRCS is your soil experts. Next, we also have, okay, so we look at the Farm Service Agency. Now, you may have just a home lot size that's vacant that you guys are going to be able to use and start growing on. But you're probably going to need a rototiller. You're going to need some spreaders. You're going to need some shovels. You're going to need some hoes. You're going to need some rakes. And you're thinking, man, this is kind of a big challenge. You can come to the Farm Service Agency and look about possibly getting a small loan. We offer loans that are micro loans that are designed for urban farmers, that are designed for the beginning farmer, that are $50,000 or less. It's a great opportunity if you guys just need $1,000 to come in and to kickstart your operation. What we want you guys to focus on doing, though, is that America is great at feeding the world. We're the country that exports and exports and exports. We pride ourselves that we grow so much food that we're able to help feed the rest of the world. We need your help, though. We need your help in getting innovative, getting creative, and starting to produce. To do that, though, it has to be a partnership. It has to be a partnership with us, the USDA. It has to be a partnership with the beginning farmer team. It has to be a partnership with the Extension Service, with the University of Arizona, and your local communities. Think outside the box. How can I get into urban ag? One of the websites I want to challenge each and every one of you guys to spend time on it. And when you navigate, it's going to take a lot of time. What I want you guys to look at is www.farmers.gov. And Santa, if you can please get that posted for me, I would appreciate it. But that website is going to take you just all over the place under the USDA umbrella. And it's going to have a place on there for beginning farmers specifically to start looking into. Santa Maria works out of the state office for the Farm Service Agency out of Phoenix. She is the perfect person to go to for initial contact. She's the perfect person to help start untangling that web. We have a great working partnership, Santa and I do. If there's questions that she's not able to answer, I guarantee you I'll get that answer for you guys. But I want you guys to think first. How can I answer my own questions? Where can I go to navigate to get my answers? Because when you do that, you grow within yourself. And you start realizing that more and more and more that you're capable and able to do this. It could be a great, exciting opportunity for you because it's a great learning opportunity for you. Just like anything else, so there's going to be successes and there's going to be failures. We want to share in your successes, but we also want to be able to be there for the failures so we can help you get back up and turn that failure into a lessons learned. Turn it into experience and have you guys become the backbone of agriculture in America. Now, if there's any veterans out there, of course, I can't see the screens, but if there's any veterans out there, I want to say, welcome home, my brother. Thank you for getting into ag. We offer some opportunities. We offer some points that you might be able to score better on. We offer different funding of money that if you guys need to borrow, that may be out there for military veterans. I know that I'm a Desert Storm veteran, served my country. And I know when I got into agriculture, when I got out of the military, when I started my farming career again, it was always great to come out there and be able to get some of those little extra points that may have helped fund us for what we're looking for. So I want you guys to keep that in mind. If you're a veteran, reach out to Santa. She's passionate about helping veterans. We want to help all beginning farmers and ranchers. We want to be able to open up the door for urban ag. This is the time, folks, to get into it. If you're thinking on it, you're still kind of on the fence. I'm going to tell you guys, get off the fence, get on the other side and get involved and start to do it. You have resources. You have a great extension service that's throughout Arizona that's going to be able to help assist you. That's going to know directly what are the questions, what are the challenges of your region, what are the growing seasons, but most importantly, what works in that area. If you live in the Phoenix, Casa Grande area, and you say, well, you know, I'm going to try something different, and I want to grow cranberries. Folks, there's a reason why people don't grow cranberries out west. We don't have the kind of water that it needs and whatnot. But they may be able to help steer you into something that you want to be able to develop a niche market. That's what's key. Don't be afraid to look into your community and look into the zoning issues. I had a nice lady in California then started growing chickens and selling her eggs in the local market. And her chickens couldn't lay fast enough. And she was ready to grow. She was ready to develop more. And she came up to me and she says, Rick, how can I grow? I can't, there's no way I can afford the land that these people are asking for, because that's developer prices. So I told her, I said, there's a lot of pivots out there, pivot irrigation. I said, every pivot sits on 160 acres and irrigates about 120 acres because of corners. I said, talk to that farmer, see if he won't let you borrow one of those corners. I said, you'll have water and you'll have land and you can build your chicken coops and you can expand your operation. She tripled her size of her egg farm, her chicken farm, just by working out an agreement with the local farmer that was out there. I remember I lived 18 years in Glendale, and I remember Glendale, I can go running out there and you'd smell the orange blossoms. If you're out there in the Mesa area or Glendale area, Peoria, and you can smell those orange blossoms and grapefruit, you know, and they just, the aroma was incredible. And you'd see all of the cotton fields that were out there, and the temperature always dropped when you got out there and you were running and jogging. And all of a sudden, you know, here come the Cardinals, here comes the hockey team, here comes a lot of urban growth. Arizona leads the nation year after year in people moving to it. So the challenges are getting harder and harder. But that doesn't mean that we quit. That means we just get innovative. And that's what urban farming is all about. It's about innovation. Don't be afraid to reach out to your urban farmers, meet with them, talk to them. There's organizations, there's groups, there's nonprofits. Meet with them, see what's working, see how you can partnership and grow and develop and gain your experience. And then maybe you're set out soon to go out and start on your own. Guys, there's no timeline. There's no level of experience. That's the beauty of it. There's no pace that you guys have to, you don't have a timeline that you have to be an experience level at a certain time. Open up, develop a game plan that is suited and works for you. Get with your extension service. Find out the nonprofits, find out the groups that are urban farming in your area, and see if you can't help and you can't start volunteering, you can't start working with them. And then all of a sudden, maybe you'll be able to find you a lot. I know that some cities offer different programs where they start you off at a quarter acre. If you're successful after a year with that quarter acre, they'll offer up to a half acre. And in a half acre, you can grow an awful lot of vegetables, an awful lot of fruit out there. So all of a sudden, develop that opportunity that's there. You guys, I'm going to be around for some questions and whatnot after. I want to thank you guys for inviting me out here. But most of all, I want you all to challenge yourself. What can I do to become successful in the agricultural community? Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Rick. I'm now going to share on the screen a survey that will really help us to tailor these experiences to be most meaningful for you all before we jump into Q&A. So if you all could please scan the QR code, the link is being dropped in the chat. We'd really appreciate if you could take this quick survey. It will help inform future events and programming that the Urban Ag Production Small Scale and Beginner Farmer Program puts on. We really want to make sure that we're best meeting you all's needs, and I'll leave this up on the screen just for a minute and we'll jump into Q&A afterwards. Okay, I hope that everyone had time to scan that QR code. Again, these evals are really important to make sure that we're hitting the mark and providing relevant and useful information for you all. And now we can jump into our Q&A. I do have some questions that popped up in the chat, and I'm not sure if folks would want to unmute themselves and ask, or I'm happy to ask. We have a question from Tommy. Tommy, are you here still? Okay, I will go ahead and ask this. What do you believe is the minimum amount of time you should put between crops of the same family when planting the same area to maintain ecosystem diversity? And this was for Debankur after his presentation. You are muted, Debankur.
Can you go again a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So the question was from Tommy, and what do you believe is the minimum amount of time you should put between crops of the same family when planting the same area to maintain ecosystem diversity?
There is no such threshold time. What I would say is, like, it's easy to answer that. It depends on your system, and I believe as a thumb rule, just one season can be great. I mean, if you don't grow the same crop the next season in the same piece of land, that's great. You just don't grow. I mean, so you all at least like one season grab, like. And when I say one season, I mean, let's say you have 3 crops a year, you come back another 3 crops next year. So the same place, the same ground, same field, don't grow the same crop. You can grow it in a different field, but not in the same piece of land. And that's enough. You give at least 1 year of time to revive. And for 1 year, you grow some other crop or some other plant system. Can be cover crops, can be perennial crops, can be anything to feed the biology, to revive the land. So yeah, that can be a thumb rule, but there is no such minimum threshold for ecosystem services. I'm sorry, I'm not that knowledgeable. Yeah.
Thank you. And Emily, I see your hand raised if you'd like to unmute yourself and.
Hi there, thank you very much. My question is about cover crops in a little more detail. The U of A Extension has produced a cover crop publication with information about certain species to grow. It's pretty general, though, in terms of the timing of planting and the seasonality. I would love to see the U of A Extension produce a calendar, just like the vegetable calendar, but a calendar specific to cover crops and any information about specific contributions that the cover crops make, biomass, nitrogen fixing, all the benefits that specific crops provide. So that is just a special request. But if Debankur wants to talk about any further detail about what to grow, that would be lovely. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emily. So, you know, to do that calendar, to do that having that kind of you know, easy table to look at, it requires some research. And I'm sorry that we do not have a very specific yet, but we're working towards it. And like with Ayman, we wrote a project last year and we're waiting for the result. So we need some projects to go on and some data to come, and then we'll have all those information. And I cannot give you a timeline, but soon is a very good timeline. So I think soon we'll have some information. And then I'm working with some Western Cover Crop Council. So if you look at Western Cover Crop Council website, they are trying to create there is a Midwest cover crop library calendar kind of thing. So they're trying to create that. But the problem is from Arizona, there are not much information around cover crops, and that's why we do not have that kind of calendar yet. But hopefully soon we'll have that. Once we get some project going on, we have some projects going on, we got some data, but it requires a lot more to kind of, because we cannot suggest you something that might ruin your farm, right? So I would say that just wait and keep patience with us. We'll have something very soon.
Great, thank you. We also had a question in the chat about how you get rid of bindweed that has taken over. So I'm not sure, Debankur, if you have any ideas on this. I see Ayman still on. He might have some ideas as well.
I think you should call or talk to our weed specialist. I'm not a weed specialist. Yeah, the only thing, like I said, weeds will grow. Now you say it's weeds for the natural system. It's just a plant taking up some space and nutrients. So the best thing from soil health, soil management point of view is to grow something to push that weed off. Just grow cover crop that are more voracious, taker of nutrients and sunlight, and can choke those weeds. It's a long-term process. It's not easy. And then you know, I think I have seen that, not in Arizona, but I've seen that sometimes when you graze those weeds and those seeds are taken and digested by the livestock, sometimes when they poop out those seeds, they're not viable enough. So having grazed those weedy lands can be an option. I mean, I'm just thinking out loud, but I'm not a weeds person, but Ayman might have some answer.
Yes, bottom line, for any weeds, you need a plant that will compete with them if you are going naturally to try to get rid of them. If there is no much competition from the plant, it would be very hard to get rid of the weed. The other thing is we try to minimize what we call the seed banks for these weeds. So every year you are doing your best not to let this weed complete their cycle to produce seed, because these seeds will end up to be in the soil. So if you don't have a way for chemical control, you will need some kind of mechanical or hand picking or anything like that, or burning to help with reducing the population of these seeds as well. So that's mainly like the bottom line. If you are going through a chemical route, there is a lot of options. It's not limited. But bottom line, either it's chemical or natural, you need to get rid of this weed as soon as possible, either by competition or by picking them up or by using pre-emergence herbicide, or you can use like some of the foliar application if you already have this plant. But don't let them complete their life cycle, because once you have seeds, that's mean one plant, God knows how many seeds they are producing, you will have multiple problems later on.
Thank you, Ayman. And I'm also happy to connect after this event around lingering questions on weed management. My email I will drop in the chat, and I see Gabriel here has a question.
Cannot hear you, Gabriel. I cannot hear that. Colleen, can you hear him?
No, I can't hear you, Gabriel. If you want to drop your question in the chat, I'm happy to read it aloud for you.
So there are some questions. I have seen one, I think raising cattle, how much space is needed, shelter and the grass and soil. So I'm looking into raising. Okay. Yeah, I'm not a cattle person, Doris. I mean, I'm sorry, but you can definitely ask Colleen, and we have cattle people and they can help. If you want to feed them with, like I said, the grazing cover crops, then you can definitely contact me and I can give you some options. And I work with some of those growers just to give them some idea about what kind of feed they can feed, but only if you want to graze them. But if you are trying to look for raising cattle, you're trying to raise cattle for milk, I think you probably want a base quality food for cattle. And then I mean, I don't know, because we do not have a lot of testing done on the cover crops, but I did some, but they're not as good as alfalfa or corn silage. So yeah, so that's there.
So in terms of cover crops, for dual purpose, like for farming and for cattle, alfalfa would be the best bet as a dual purpose cover crop.
That's a definitely alfalfa would give you better feed quality the way alfalfa is processed as hay. Not so when you have a crop growing, you cannot feed cattle at any stage. It has to be harvested at perfect stage, and then it has to be processed. And I'm probably a better person to talk about alfalfa than me. But I'm trying to say, if you grow only alfalfa, then you're not solving the purpose. You know.
I understand, but what kind of crop would serve as a dual purpose?
I mean, I can think of a couple that might give you like sorghum and mixed with some legume crops, you know, but I'm not sure if they will provide enough nutrition for a dairy cattle. That's what I'm trying to say, that for dairy cattle, you really need a perfect nutrition, but for other livestock that doesn't need that high feed value nutrition, a definite quantity, you can have like sorghum, some other like millets, punch to it, you know, some legume crops can give you a good feed for your cattle. But depending on, again, what your final product is, then you have to think about what kind of crop you want to feed. Yeah.
Thank you.
If I can add something here, it's all, Doris, depend on what is your business plan, what are you up for, what you would like to produce. If you are producing cattle or like dairy cows or anything like that, you will need, you know, a forage crop, strong one, good one. And alfalfa would be like a good option. It would be like perennial. You will have it, you will live with it for like 3 to 5 years, depend on your varieties. But there is a chance all the time when you are breaking this cycle is to know what you don't have. And that's a good time for soil analysis, to take soil samples and to know what you have in your soil, also what you have in your irrigation water. And from there, you can build up what we can say, what we can call a fertilizer budget. And that will let you know what you have in your resources as soil and water. and what you need to achieve, the maximum yield of your following crops. And with that, you can figure out whether you either need any of this fertilization or need nothing at all. So one practice that I'm encouraging everyone to do is soil analysis, because I don't know how many times I was like with some of our growers and we saved a lot of money just by investing a little bit in soil analysis. And especially now.
I did do a soil analysis. It needs, I believe it's potassium and phosphorus is what it needs, phosphorus.
So if that is the case, you don't need as much in anything else. And if it's what you need is just the potassium, you'll just need either to add it or to figure out a crop, especially like a summer cover crop, like Sudan grass or like Bermuda grass or like sorghum. They will give you a good amount of this nutrition, and you will see that by the analysis later on after that. And then you can go back to your cycle, whether it's like alfalfa or any other crop that will help your main purpose of production here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all. I do see a question in the chat from Art asking, what are preferred strategies for amending high clay soils? Is adding organic material, compost to higher clay soils kin to a few, or oops, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
I can answer very quick. And so, yeah, it's very, very tough to amend any kind of extreme soil texture. You have high clay, you have high sand. It's very hard. And for high clay soil, definitely it will be a slow process because you have a clay soil and you cannot get rid of clay. What you can do, you can provide something more that will modify the effect of the texture of high clay. And definitely compost can help. There will be, it won't be like as significant as if you had a different kind of soil. So yeah, I would say, it's just a tough question. But what compost does is just add carbon, modify the porosity, the water movement, the air movement. So that would definitely help in your clay soil. But I do not know the exact what extent. So if that answered your question. And then Gabriel had a question, but I do not know if I can answer that. It's a tough question. So Art, did I answer your question? This question is, he's wondering about those small pieces of land. I think you can farm anywhere. I don't know. Colleen, is it your?
Yes, yeah. So I would say yes. If you build a business plan that is built for that, then it makes good sense that that's what your system is. So really, it's just coming down to having your mission statement, your business plan outlined clearly, and that being a part of it, that you have a 1/4 acre here and 3 or 4 of those. So I'm happy to talk further and share resources with you that could help build out that vision. And I dropped my email in the chat. So yeah, I'd love to talk more. I think it's an interesting idea. And I have seen other producers who have a 1/4 acre plot here and a plot here because land access is challenging, especially in urban areas. So thank you everyone so much. Gabriel, I hope that we answered that as best as we can in this short time frame. But like I said, please email me afterwards and we'll connect and can set up a meeting to discuss further. I am just going to share on the screen one last time for everyone the survey. And please, like I said, if you could fill it out, it'll help us just make these events better as we go for you all. So thank you for joining, and we're excited to have you all here.
Thank you very much, Colleen.